The world is louder and more chaotic than ever. That's why clarity and truth have never been more important. Welcome to the Trust Factor Podcast. Good morning, everybody. Excited to get back into where we left off. But before we do, I want to mention to people who may not know that we're sitting in times that are called the intermediate days of the holiday. The days in between the holy days, or holiest days of the holiday, the first 2 days, the last 2 days of Passover, are called Chol Hamoed, which is basically the mundane of the holiday, the mundane days of the holiday. But they're still a holiday. A lot of people don't realize it. They think that they can just get back to the way that things were before. And in reality, there are a lot of halachas, a lot of laws written around what we can and cannot do on these holy days, because they are still considered holy. And remember, on top of that, I was telling you before that if you're looking for divine assistance to be able to overcome your challenges, there's no better time than now. There's no better time than this week during Chol Hamoed, where you have time to be able to do the things that you want to do with your family, enjoy the time off, take the extended vacation, and make it meaningful, to also put in that extra time into your prayer to ask for the things that you need. So that is until Tuesday, which is tomorrow night. It goes really quickly, my friends, and then we're back in to the last 2 days of Passover. And then it's dry for nearly 2 months until we get into Shavuot. Maximize these days, my friends. We're still in the month of Nisan. Great miracles are abound and can happen for you if you are trying to tap into the source. Yesterday, we talked about how difficult it is. It's not an easy feat. The things that we're talking about right now, in theory, we can talk about them till we're blue in the face about how wonderful it is to be the good guy, and how we shouldn't take things personally, and how we should take our job so seriously, but make sure that we're always being careful with everybody around us. That's a full-time job in and of itself, even if you're not in the customer service business like the example we gave yesterday. It's not an easy thing to do. If it was an easy thing to do, everybody would be doing it, and I wouldn't have to give a podcast to educate the world on the right way to behave. Clearly, it's a challenge. And so that's why we're going through this, to be able to educate everybody so that you understand that you're going to be put in difficult situations. Not everybody is going to be put in a position of power throughout their entire career. That may ebb and flow, or you may find yourself in a position of authority over others for the entirety of your career. And it may even just become that you get more and more authority as you move up the ladder. So you have to try your best, if you're in that position, to do the right thing despite the difficulty, because you know that there is a tremendous, tremendous award that is exponentially greater than that anybody else not in your position can achieve if you do the right thing. So yesterday we talked about that clerk, the government clerk, the office clerk, the utility company, customer service rep, who's the first line of defense. Now he gets into a conversation about a police officer. We talked about the state trooper, similar type of situation. But it's very important to recognize that when you're dealing with a police officer, that position is a very important position, because God created this world with a sense of law and order, with a sense of justice. And so a police officer, his job is to uphold Hashem's order. You know, on a separate note, the order, the law that we see, the man-made quote-unquote laws that we see today, certainly they are impacted by man. But you should know their source is all in Torah. All of the civil law that we deal with in Western democracies, its foundational principles are all rooted in the Torah. Very clear that the laws and the rules and the regulations and the halachas that we have in our Torah form the basis of the modern day legal system. So this police officer is a representation of the law, of law and order and justice, which is everything that Hashem stands for. So you have to understand that when you're being approached by a police officer, that now you have to have even more respect and admiration for the individual who's doing a very difficult job. He's doing really a holy job. If he is a holy person is a different question. Just because he's a police officer doesn't mean he's a holy person, but he's certainly doing a holy job. He says over here that the main test of a police officer is to avoid being cruel and to avoid being iron-handed. He needs to know what I just told you, that he's doing a holy job, that he's an emissary from God. If he's a believer, if he knows that God runs the world, if he's done his research, I know a few religious Orthodox Jewish police officers. They aren't many, because generally Jews don't get into that line of work, but there are some. And you can know and be sure that those people are going to deal with the people that they pull over or that they interact with in a very different way. And every police officer really needs to know this so that they conduct themselves carefully. They need to be super careful because they can easily overdo it, and their power that's bestowed upon them by government forces has the ability to strip you of your rights in a second. All he needs to do is grab a hold of your arm and he's taken away your civil rights in a heartbeat. So he has to be exceedingly, exceedingly careful. Let's say, for example, he pulls over a person for a traffic stop. He says clearly that he should not yell at him. He should not be aggressive with an individual. Everybody's got stories. I've got my own stories. Everybody's got their own. Are the police officers that have something to prove. They are power-tripping police officers. They're everywhere. One of the biggest forms of entertainment is the body cams of police officers. The police departments themselves put them out. I just saw the other day that Tiger Woods is suing the police department because they released his video footage that he was recently stopped for DUI, and he has all kinds of embarrassing footage that the police department took the liberty of sharing at their own will. Why? Since when do police departments send out and release that information with no purpose? If you're looking for evidence, I get it. If you're looking for witnesses, I get it. But just like this, to embarrass somebody, to say, here, look at this individual and put this video out to embarrass him, why? It's embarrassing enough that his name is going to be plastered all over the internet and all over the media. They add damage to this individual. You understand? That's the problem we're dealing with today. And that's the reason why we're doing this podcast. Not necessarily just because of you and I. It's because institutions, government institutions, the ones that we are supposed to rely on, don't have moral clarity. They are behaving in a way that is unbecoming of a government institution. And so while you and I can try and fix the problem between ourselves and try and explain to each other how to behave, it really needs to be a trickle-up effect. It needs to go from the people on the bottom all the way up to the top, because it's the ones at the top that are usually the ones setting the tone for everybody below them, like we said yesterday. Even if the police officer has the authority to give the person a really stiff penalty to make their life difficult, he should be merciful and considerate wherever he can. Clearly, a first offense deserves more consideration than a serial offender. That's why most police officers at a traffic stop will take your driver's license. They'll go back to their car. They'll run your name through the system. If you are a serial repeat offender and you're constantly getting yourself in trouble and you're not learning the lesson from your experiences, then I get it. Then he's got to send the message. You're not getting it. So he's got to up the message, which, by the way, should sound familiar. Why? Because we've dealt with this before when it comes to Hashem. That's how he communicates with us. He gives us love taps. If you're going off the derech, as they say, if you're going in a direction that is the wrong direction, then God gives you a love tap. He taps you on the shoulder. He tries to get your attention by sending you a tribulation. If you notice, if you pay attention and you respond to the tribulation, then the test is over. Now you can deal with the problem at hand. But if you don't, if you ignore it and you just push forward and push through, then he tries to get your attention in a more aggressive way. He sends you a more difficult tribulation. He gives you something that's the equivalent of a real punch. And again, if you ignore it, he sends you more and more messages. And the more you ignore it, the harder the messages become. He's going to get your attention, my friends, one way or another. The smart money just recognizes that I should be dialed in. He shouldn't have to come at me so hard. I should be able to see his hand right away. As soon as he tries to get my attention, I should see it. I should be looking for it on a daily basis. It's the same thing. If a police officer pulls you over, he first has to establish, is this guy getting the message? Is he a repeat offender? How many times was he pulled over in the last year? How many tickets does he have for the same thing? Because if he's got multiple tickets for the same infraction, then this guy's not learning his lesson, and we got to lay down the law on this person. Otherwise, he becomes a liability to everybody, himself, his passengers, and the people on the road. And so that police officer's job is to enforce the law and make sure that the streets are safe. If, however, he looks at this guy's driving record and he sees he's squeaky clean, can't find a record, can't even find a parking ticket, nothing. This guy's a great driver, great record. Why would I ruin it for him? Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody does something. Now, obviously, we're talking about an infraction here that is not something that's, God forbid, going to kill somebody. He rolled through a stop sign in the middle of in the wee hours of the morning at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. He rolled through a stop sign. He didn't blow through it. He didn't come to a complete stop. You're going to go and destroy this guy's pristine driving record at 3 o'clock in the morning where there isn't a soul on the street and this guy's just trying to get home from a long day at work. You understand? You got to do the math in your head. You got to recognize you're dealing with a human being, not just to try and fill a quota. If you're trying to fill a quota, you're in the wrong job. That's not the job of law enforcement, is to fill quotas. And if they have that policy, I can assure you it's a corrupt policy. It's not one that comes from the Torah, at least not that I know of, that the police officers are charged with going out and giving out at least a minimum amount of tickets. Whether or not they're deserving, you need to come back with a certain amount of tickets. Otherwise, you're not doing your job. If you live in an environment where that's the case, then you have to know that you're living under a corrupt policing policy. But as far as the police officer is concerned, he needs to do his best to make sure that he's merciful, that he explains to the individual the severity of what they've done, to explain to the individual the risks associated with it, how many people he could potentially affect. But at the end of the day, do the math. And if this person is deserving of a little handout, give him the handout. There are too many police officers today that are abusing their powers. They are power-tripping police officers. You see them all over the internet. At the same time, there are very lovely police officers who are tested in a huge way. Remember yesterday I said that these customer service representatives are dealing with people who are not happy. They're coming at them with all kinds of claims, and they're trying to take out their frustration on this customer service rep. There are that many more doing it to police officers. I don't understand it for the life of me. I've never understood how going at somebody in a position of authority with aggression and insults is going to win you any favor in that person's eyes. I don't get it. This guy has the ability in 1 second to take away your civil rights. Okay, yeah, he's bound by certain laws and regulations, but now you wait. And in the meantime, you deal with the difficulty. You deal with the tribulation of what you've just done by getting aggressive with this police officer, and then wait for your day in court to try and dish down some of the justice if it ever comes out. Bottom line, you're dealing with a human being as a police officer, and he's in a position of authority. Raising your voice and getting aggressive, especially when there's no reason for it, especially when it's just the beginning of the traffic stop, you're setting yourself up for failure. Be polite, considerate. Remember that this individual is doing holy work. He himself may not be holy, but the work is holy. And so respect that. Deal with them nicely. Attract the individual with honey. Be nice. Be sweet. And the odds are that you'll have an individual who will reciprocate. They're human beings at the end of the day. They don't want to be miserable. Just like I said yesterday with the border guard. They don't want to go home miserable unless they're just miserable people. There are plenty of miserable people. And if Hashem sent that miserable person to you, then you should accept that with love and know that there's a reason that he sent you that police officer and not the nicest one on the force. And you should stay quiet and you should accept whatever berating he's going to give you and speak to your creator when it's all said and done, and he will take care of that. End of story. It's not in your hands to go up against police officers in the street. That's a recipe for disaster. You're going to destroy your life, and you're going to make yourself miserable and your family miserable, and you're going to let that police officer go home miserable, and then you're into a vicious cycle. Why? Isn't it a shame? Tomorrow we'll get into the position of a judge, and then we'll go over to the guy who gives you the parking ticket. And then we'll move on from there. But the bottom line in all of these, my friends, the message is consistent. If you're in a position of authority, you have extra responsibility on your head because the downside is tremendous. But at the same time, the upside is equally exponentially good. Have an amazing day, my friends. Thank you for spending time with us on the Trust Factor podcast. If you've heard something today that moved you, save this episode and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss upcoming conversations that challenge, empower, and uplift. And if you're on social media, connect with us. Leave your thoughts. Drop a quote that resonated with you. Hashtag the Trust Factor podcast. Until next time, keep growing in your trust and keep living with purpose. I'm Jesse Revivo, and this has been the Trust Factor Podcast. Thanks for listening.